Now, across your role, you may come across, or if you're diagnosed or as a family member, you'll come across different terms. So we'll start with neurodiversity. We'll define that. Now, the human being has many varied forms of neurocognitive variation, and the term neurodiversity is an umbrella term that quickly identifies these differences as a result of a neurodevelopmental condition. Not all neurodevelopment conditions make you neurodiverse. Bear that in mind too. Now, neurodiversity is a category of organisational diversity and inclusion, which has the focus on those who think differently and so maximises their talents by embracing these intelligent and talented people and so ensuring inclusion. So neurodiversity, therefore, focuses on people who think, process, retain, recite, and learn information differently, as well as how people interact differently, particularly with autism and ADHD. Those with neurodiverse conditions also have difficulties with social situations too. All conditions are multi-layered and a spectrum, and each layer affects everyone differently. And so once you've met one person with a condition, you can't say that you've met all neurodiverse people. Those who are neurodivergent have the same level of skills and abilities and also intelligence as those who are not neurodiverse, have no condition. Okay, moving on to neurodiversity terms. I'm going to explain those. So now, labels help you understand a person and their neurodiversity. Labels, however, don't tell you about a person's character. That's quite key. The labels don't tell you either about a person's intelligence. Now, many people find labels a negative, whilst others find them a positive thing, and many people are neutral on that. Now, I personally I don't mind any sort of label, but many do. Now, the medical model of disability, briefly, is when a person is diagnosed, it's they're responsible to correct that matter to help remove any barriers to participation. The social model of disability says that regardless of a diagnosis, a person is actually disabled by the policies and practices of society and organisations, not actually by their condition. You may see the term chronic in somebody's report, and that means a long-term condition. It might be lifelong, but it particularly means long-term. The phrase "nothing about us without us" you may have heard of. Now, when researching and making decisions about a certain group of people, then that research and the application of that research should actually include the input at all stages by people of that group. Coping strategies. That is, when a person has a condition, they will find and develop many different techniques and strategies to cope with that condition. It might be from pain relief to performance management and everything else in between. You may have heard the phrase comorbidity. That simply means alongside other condition or conditions. Learning disability. This is an umbrella term for disorders characterised by substantial defects in either literacy or mathematical abilities. Now, the phrase was introduced by psychologist Samuel Kirk in 1962, so recently but a long time ago, and it's now a little bit outdated both socially and scientifically, or you may still hear it banded around. Now, the left and right brain theory. It's believed by some that where a person is left brain dominated, they are more analytical and logical. And where a person is right brain dominated, they are creative, spontaneous, subjective. The Equality Act 2010. It's a superior piece of legislation which all decisions must consider to enable equal opportunity for protected characteristics. You may have heard the phrase neurology. That is simply the study of the nervous system. Now, the nervous system is the sensory and control system and the enabling neurons. It's the neurons that pass the messages from cell to cell. Neurodevelopment. Now, this is the time frame during which the nervous system grows and develops, which is prenatal up to about 25, 27 years of age. Neuron is a nerve cell specializing in the transmission of nerve impulses. Now, it's those nerve impulses that actually carry the message, the electricity, the message from one part of the brain to the next and the rest of the body. Neurotypical is somebody who has the same characteristics of everyone or everything in that same group. Neurodiversity, we touched on it at the beginning of this video, as a range of different thinking styles and abilities. It is a label that includes people who can think, process, retain, and learn information differently. And it does also include people who interact differently with each other too. Initially coined in the late 90s to refer to autism, and then it's expanded out. Neurodivergent is a person who has a specific diagnostic label relating to the nervous system, and that might be Tourette's, tic disorder, might be autism spectrum condition, and so on. Now, neurologically atypical is where you're different from all others of the same type. And a neurominority, that is neurodivergent people who are statistically lower in their numbers than other groups. It's purely a statistical thing. High or low functioning. It's an old term now, but previously, when a person would be diagnosed, a reference would be made as to how well that person could be independent without support. Now, although still highly impaired, the person may still be high functioning, meaning that they need much less support than a person who is low functioning. It is purely a clinical term and nothing else really. And it's not used so much now anyway, post 2013. Now, a tic is a sudden, rapid, a recurrent, a non-rhythmic motor movement or vocalization. A tic could be any part of the body. So the vocalization too. Working memory, that's short-term memory, which is a store for recently activated items information that are currently occupying your consciousness. So the retrieval for a few weeks, it might be right now when you're thinking about this video and making notes, that's your working memory. Masking. This is where a person hides their invisible condition presentation by certain activities and tasks. The person still has the difficulties, but is hiding them for fear of being sacked or becoming an outcast. Stimming. A self-comfort act, such as hand flapping, people may rock, and also people can also be twisting a piece of cloth or so on. The person is focused on the stimming to subconsciously distract themselves from what's actually causing them anxiety. So there's an increased amount of stimming when they're highly anxious. Now, scripted speech. This is where a person will repeat back to you a pre-script based on what they think you will ask them throughout a conversation. Whilst this may seem like a disjointed conversation, the person with autism spectrum is communicating in such a way to achieve their goal. Now, how do you define occupational health? Occupational health professionals focus on a person's health and its relationship with their work. They also ascertain whether or not a person is fit to carry out a role. Now, very important to remember, well, everything's important, but occupational health will not deal with capability. Now, that's something that has to be assessed objectively in a decision reached by HR. Now, psychiatry defined. You'll see reports from psychiatry. It is a branch of medicine which is devoted to the diagnosis, classification and treatment, and also the prevention, actually, too, of mental disorders. The aim is to diagnose a person's difficulties and then treat them. Now, assessments and subsequent diagnosis are carried out clinically by qualified and trained doctors, neurologists, surgeons. Psychology, defined, is the study of the nature, functions and phenomena of behaviour and mental experience. Modern psychology is a branch, and it focuses upon behaviour rather than the mind itself. So that's possibly where there's been a bit of confusion between people. Psychology is therefore the study of behaviour, or rather the science of behaviour. It aims to understand a difficulty which is not a mental disorder, and then with counselling sessions, for example, they will help the person take charge of their thinking and difficulties and help them change their approach to that concern and help them move forward. Now, this might be carried out by non-clinicians, but they do need to be qualified and trained.